Hey, this is Rick Caselge, injury specialist from exercisesforinjuries.com. I'm really glad that you got this video report. So this video report is the 5 tricks that fight elbow pain and tightness. I know going through this video report, looking at the 5 tricks and taking action on the 5 tricks are drastically going to help your elbow pain and tightness. Now I'm going to go into the first trick, and what it is stop doing that. And I'll get Andrea to demonstrate the things that you should stop doing. And the first thing that she's going to look at is your sitting and how you are in your sitting. So poor posture when you sit ends up affecting your elbow pain. So if you have poor posture, you can't get help from your shoulder blade and your shoulder. All the work ends up having to happen from your wrist and your elbow. And if it happens in your wrist, that puts more stress on your elbow. If you have good posture, you can get help from your shoulder blade muscles and your shoulder, and that ends up putting less stress on your elbow. Now, second is like your computer work. Same thing, if you end up having poor posture and doing computer work, you're relying a lot more on your elbow to do the work. And you know, the first couple times it's no big deal, first 100 times it's no big deal, first 10,000 times it's no big deal, but when you start getting into like 50,000 times doing things in a poor posture, it can end up, you know, breaking your elbow and leading to more pain and injury in your elbow. So not literally breaking your elbow, but meaning that it goes from pain-free to painful. Now, if you go into a better posture, you get help from your shoulder blade muscles, you get help from your shoulder, and that decreases the stress on your elbow. It'll prevent elbow pain, and also it will end up helping when it comes to the recovery of elbow pain. A big thing that I talk about is decreasing unnecessary stress on injured areas, and this is one example. If you're in that poor posture when it comes to sitting and computer work, you're putting unnecessary stress on the elbow. It's having to work harder than it really needs to. And if you get in that good posture, you decrease the stress on it, and that allows it to recover and decrease the risk of it being re-injured. Now the third thing ends up being the driving. So how you're on the driving. If it ends up being poor posture with the driving, you lose that help from the shoulder blade and the shoulder, and you're relying more on the elbow to do the work. If you get into that better posture, you get that help from the shoulder blade and the shoulder and decreases the stress on the elbow. So there you go. This is the first tip, and probably the easiest trick that you can implement and have a drastic effect on your elbow pain and tightness. Look at your posture, do it correctly, and your elbow will be happy that you did. Now let's move on to the second trick. Okay, now we're on to the second trick. And what it ends up being, it's all in your head. I'm quite sure you've heard of this, especially if you've ever had other pains. People might have said, well, it's just all in your head. And in some ways it's true, but maybe not in the way that you think it is. When it comes to pain, a lot of times how we feel and how we think ends up affecting our knee pain. And usually if we end up thinking negatively, or if we end up being overwhelmed and stressed, this makes our pain worse, and this also is the case when it comes to elbow pain. So if you end up being overwhelmed, stressed, or thinking negatively, it ends up having a negative effect on your body and increasing your pain, especially when it comes to your elbow pain. And let me kind of explain how that is. So let's say you feel overwhelmed, you end up getting more tightness, you get more tightness in your shoulders and upper body and in your elbow. That extra tightness puts unnecessary stress on the elbow, and that unnecessary stress leads to irritation, pain, and a full-blown injury. Now, let's say you end up having negative thoughts. That tension also ends up happening as well. So what you want to do is break that tension, break that overwhelm, break that emotional stress break those negative thoughts. And one way of doing that is with belly breathing. So what I find is even just taking a moment and some time to take some good deep belly breaths end up having an effect, a positive effect on the way you think, on the way your body is, the tension you have, the emotional stress that you have. So what I recommend for you to do is stop and take some belly breaths. And how you end up doing that is one hand on the chest, one hand on the stomach. If I step back, yeah, one hand, there we go. And then what I'm doing is taking a breath in, bottom hand is elevating, and then breathing out. Blowing out all that tension, all that stress that I have, all that tightness in the body. Breathing in, bottom hand is elevating. Breathing in through the nose. Breathing out through the mouth, blowing out all of that tension, all that stress, all that anxiety, all those negative thoughts. And taking a minute or two to do that and doing 5 good belly breaths will end up having a drastic effect on your body, how you feel, the tension, the overwhelm, your negative thoughts. And it will have a positive effect on your elbow pain. So there you go. That ends up being the second trick. Now let's move on to the third trick. All right, here we are with the third trick. This ends up being your mouth is the problem. Have you ever heard of, you are what you eat, or what you see is a reflection of what you eat as well? Well, in many ways it's true, and it's true when it comes to your pain and your elbow pain. So what you eat can have an effect on your elbow pain, how quickly you recover, and how intense that elbow pain is. And the reason why is because of inflammation. What inflammation is let's say you've twisted your ankle or you've hit yourself, you get an inflammatory response. Things end up getting hot, red, you end up having poor movement, you get pain. Well, that can happen with the foods that you eat. That response ends up happening inside your body, deep within your joints and deep within your muscles. So your body ends up fighting this inflammation. So it ends up spending more time fighting this inflammation than helping repair the body and move it outside of pain. And this inflammatory response, I find, ends up being being caused by 6 common foods that we end up eating: sugar, gluten, processed oils, alcohol, dairy, and soy. Now, all of these things end up having a negative response on the body, and then ends up affecting our pain and having an effect on our elbow pain. Now, let's say with sugar, processed sugar, consuming a lot of it ends up leading to that inflammatory response. Gluten, which is often found in breads, ends up having a negative effect as well on the body and leading to more pain. Processed artificial oils as opposed to whole oils have a negative effect on the body. Alcohol has a negative effect. Dairy, because a lot of us tend to be sensitive to dairy, as well as soy. A lot of us end up being sensitive to soy and having a reaction to soy. So what I recommend for people to do is to try a 7-day challenge, a 7-day anti-inflammatory challenge where you try to cut these foods out for 7 days. Try to cut out these 6 things for 7 days. So you're trying to minimize or eliminate these things for 7 days and seeing how you feel, how your body feels, and how your pain feels, and how your elbow pain feels. And I know it'll end up having a positive effect on your body and your pain. Now, if you're looking for other ideas when it comes to avoiding this inflammation in our body, then I would recommend for you to take a look at a book that I put together called Best Foods That Slim and Heal in 7 Days. So it's a comprehensive list of foods that are good for the body, that help avoid that inflammation, that chronic inflammation that's happening in the body, and also keep the body healthy, happy and pain-free. So check that out, and now we'll move on to the 4th trick. Okay, so now we're into the fourth trick. And what it is eat this for healthy joints. Now what I've found is you need certain minerals, vitamins, macronutrients, and micronutrients for healthy muscles and joints. And looking at the fruits and vegetables we eat, we don't get all of those vitamins, minerals, macronutrients, and micronutrients that we need. And this might be due to the soil conditions that these are grown in, how we end up storing our food, how we end up processing our food. All of that ends up taking away from everything that we need in those fruits and vegetables. And especially when it relates to muscle and joint health. Now, what I found is with myself and my clients, when I focus in on those micronutrients and make sure my body and my clients' bodies have these micronutrients, it ends up helping when it comes to muscle and joint pain. Now, I wasn't able to find this by just eating, a variety of fruits and vegetables. What I ended up having to do was do some research and put together a blend together that ended up having all the vitamins, minerals, macronutrients, and micronutrients for muscle and joint health. And what ended up happening, or what the result was Joint Complex 4000. So this ends up being a blend of these vitamins, minerals, macronutrients, and micronutrients needed for optimal health and optimal muscle and joint health in order to prevent muscle pain and joint pain. So I would recommend checking out Joint Complex 4000 for muscle pain and joint pain, because it has a blend of 23 pain relieving ingredients that will definitely help you with muscle pain and joint pain. So there you go. Make sure that you're having all of the vitamins, minerals, macronutrients, and micronutrients for optimal muscle and joint health. And if you don't, then check out Joint Complex 4000. It will fill in that gap. Now, let's move. That ends up being number 4, eat this for healthy joints. And this is what I recommend for healthy joints, Joint Complex 4000. Now this ends up being the 4th trick. Now let's move on to the 5th trick. Okay, now we're into the 5th trick. And the 5th trick ends up being doing the best exercises for elbow pain relief. Now, there ends up being 5 exercises that I end up recommending, and each of them have a specific purpose in helping you when it comes to elbow pain relief. Now, I'll get Andrea to demonstrate the first one. And what it ends up being is self-massaging the elbow. So you've got the elbow resting up against your body, you've got the opposite hand, digging into the muscle, and what you're doing is you're looking for sensitive areas in that muscle. And when you find those sensitive areas, you're going to press into it lightly so it's a little uncomfortable. When it releases, then we're going to move to another part of the muscle. And you're looking at like 5 spots. And you would look on the outer part of the forearm, like through here. And then as Andrea was doing, you would end up going through the inner part as well. And with that one, if you don't have the finger strength, or if that's too much for you, or you need more intensity, you can end up utilizing a ball. So I can use the ball, and I can have the ball pressed into the wall, which ends up pressing into my muscle, and I could roll through that forearm muscle, and I can roll through, or I can find those spots, those sensitive spots, the trigger points, hold it there and until it relieves. So Andrea initially demonstrated the outer part of the forearm. Now she's demonstrating the inner part of the forearm and elbow. And looking here, yeah. So this is how it would be. You'd be up against the wall. You'd be rolling through that outer part of the forearm, elbow. And you can also look for those sensitive areas or trigger points, hold it there. You get a little bit of relief, then you can move to the next one. and then she's demonstrated how to do the inner part of the elbow, inner part of the forearm. And so with this one, you're just doing, when it comes to sets, reps, and time, you're just going to go through one set, and you're looking for those 5 sensitive areas in the outer part and 5 sensitive areas in the inner part. Depending on where your elbow pain is, if it's on the outer part of the elbow, you're probably going to have more sensitivity on the outer part of the forearm and probably not much in the inner. So you can skip that part, but if you end up having, if the elbow pain's on the inside of your elbow, you'll probably have more sensitivity here and not much in the outer part. So you can cut out a couple of them depending on where your elbow pain is. Now we're going to end up moving on to the second one, and this one ends up being hand on the wall. So you end up having the hand touch below shoulder height, and then you're just going to hold it there. You bent the wrist, elbows straight, arms in line with the shoulder, and you're looking for a light stretch. It could be in the wrist, forearm, arm, and that could carry on into the shoulder. And now we'll show you this way. So just like this. And you're looking for a light stretch. So when it comes to the light stretch, I would start off quite lightly with this one. So I would start off like 5. So when it comes to sets, reps, and time, 1 set, repetitions, 2 on each side, alternating back and forth. And I would start off lightly with like 5 seconds. See how it feels. If it feels better, see if you're getting stretching in that arm. If you are, you can end up progressing to 10 seconds, then even to 20 seconds. But start off lightly at that 5 seconds. And remember the first trick we talked about when it related to the posture. So with this one and all the exercises, your posture is going to affect things. If you end up having poor posture and going through the arm on the wall, it's not going to be as effective if you get into good posture and go with that arm on the wall. Now moving on to the third one, we're going to do some more stretching when it comes to wrist stretching. So with this one, so I'll get Andrew, I'll show you this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the arms, so I got shoulder height, a touch below. I'm going to bring the palm towards me, and I'm looking at stretching the outer part of the forearm. So with this one, I'm going to hold this light stretch, 20 seconds, and then I'm going to go the opposite way. Good. Now, so it's not locked, it's straight. I've got the arm just below the shoulder height, and now I might feel the stretch through here. Usually one of the stretches you feel more than the other, and that a lot of times that depends where the elbow pain ends up being. I recommend that you end up doing both, because if one of them really hits things, going the opposite direction will give that really tight one a little bit of a break until you go back to it. So with this one, you would end up going twice on each side, so alternating back and forth. When it comes to palm towards you and palm away from you, and then you can decide if you end up doing it on the other side. There's no harm in doing it on both sides, but if you just have the elbow pain on one side and you're short on time, you can just focus on doing it on that one side. So if you look at what we've gone through so far, we've done the self-massage, which ends up loosening up that muscle, the elbow muscle, in order to decrease stress in the muscle and in the elbow. And we've done the 2 stretches, one more of a whole arm stretch and 2 that kind of focused on the forearm. Now we're going to end up going into the 4th one, and this is a wall push-up with plus. So arms are just below shoulder height. You're on the toes, you're going to pivot in the toes, you're going to come towards the wall, you're going to straighten out, and then you're going to protract a little bit. Good. And then coming back into it. Good. Coming back, and then a little bit of a protraction. Perfect. So what I mean by the protraction is if I go into the push-up, I'm pushing away. This is where I usually end, and then I want to push the arms forward a little bit more and feel the muscles here work to push my arm forward. So I'm not collapsing the head and rounding through the back. I'm trying to stay still, good posture, and I'm trying to move that shoulder forward and feel the muscles through here working. So with this one, what we're doing now is a strengthening one, and strengthening some of the muscles in the shoulder that tend to be weak, that end up having poor activation, endurance, and strength. And when it comes to pain, so oftentimes if you end up having a shoulder injury or elbow injury or a wrist injury, these muscles in the shoulder tend to turn off, so you end up not having the stability from those muscles. So we want to wake them up so they can help when it comes to providing stability in the shoulder, which will end up helping when it comes to elbow pain, because they'll end up taking up more of the workload than the elbow when it comes to upper body activities. So with this one, when it comes to sets, reps, and time, one set, you're going to go through 5 repetitions in a smooth, controlled movement, and the end position, you're going to a stop, so holding for about a second or 2. Now, now we're getting to the 5th one. This ends up being a full Nelson with mid-back tightness. So Andrea is going to interlock the fingers in behind her head. She's going to bring the elbows back. She's going to tighten up that mid-back area, hold it for that stop, and then she's going to relax and then go into it again. So with this one, what we're ending up doing is we're stretching out the front of the shoulder. We're working on strengthening out that mid-back area and those shoulder blade muscles, and we're working on improving that posture. So as we talked about at the start, improving that posture will help decrease the stress on the elbow. Loosening up things here in the front of the shoulder will help with that posture. And then working on that mid-back strengthening, so working on the activation, endurance, and strength of those mid-back muscles and shoulder blade muscles will wake up those muscles in the shoulder that are oftentimes turned off because of pain in the arm or injury in the arm. If we wake those up, the shoulder can do more of the work than the elbow. And you can see the shoulder is such a larger, bigger joint and has larger, bigger muscles compared to the elbow. So a lot of times, poor posture and poor muscle function in the shoulder leads to elbow pain and elbow injury. So there you go. That ends up being the 5 tricks to fight elbow pain and tightness. I know going through those 5, watching this full video report and learning all the 5 tricks and implementing all of the 5 tricks, I know it's going to drastically help when it comes to your elbow pain and tightness. Now, if you want to learn more about myself, what you can do is you can check out exercisesforinjuries.com. That's my hub, that's my blog. Just head there. There's a whole bunch more videos and articles. What I tell people to do is to enter in their injury and pain in the search box on that site. And there's a good chance that I'll end up having a video interview, exercises, article when it relates to your pain and injury. So with this video you've watched, it relates to elbow pain, but a lot of people end up having all kinds of pains, and I recommend that you end up visiting exercisesforinjuries.com for help when it comes to your other injuries. So that's it. This is Rick Casalge from exercisesforinjuries.com saying take care and bye-bye.